This program is brought to you by the National Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors, promoting political advocacy, education, and the ethical conduct of its members nationwide.
Welcome to another edition of NAFA's Programs in a Box. I'm Gina Pellegrini. Before I get started, let me tell you a little bit about my background. For 17 years, I worked with an insurance agent in Chicago at Northwestern Mutual. When I first started with him, I was Gina's secretary. I did pretty much whatever he wanted. And then over the years, I got licensed and pretty much ran his organization. Al Granum was our general agent, and at one point he asked me to create some training programs within the organization to help other secretaries, then we were called administrative assistants, and then sales assistants in the organization to help other advisors, which I started doing. And over the years, I decided that there was a little niche to start my own business, which is Pellegrini Team Consulting. Today, I'm going to be sharing some of my history with you. We'll be talking a little bit about systems, communication, and more importantly, the value of teamwork. So let's start with building teamwork. First and foremost, be a leader. What does a leader really mean? If you are leading your team, hopefully they will follow behind you. The difference between a boss and a leader, a boss says go, and a leader says let's go. So let's break that down a little bit more. When I say that they're going to follow you, they're going to follow your lead, it doesn't mean that if you have strong work ethic or you're there 12 hours a day, that that's what they're going to mirror. What they're really going to mirror is how much time you spend with them. What they're looking for is your investment in them, and the more that you give to them, the more they're going to give to you. So as a leader, what I'm looking for is for you to spend quality time more than walking by, yelling out. It's really sitting down and investing your time with them. The second piece is sharing your vision. I'm amazed when I'm working with people every day, teams like yourself, that the staff doesn't understand what the company vision is, and or more importantly, what your goals are. How are they going to help you get where you need to be if they're unaware of what your goals are? So let's just say it's the end of the year and you set up your goals. The key thing or the most valuable thing would be to bring them in and share your vision with them. Even if you're unaware exactly what those goals are going to be, they need to understand the value of your goals, the activity it takes to get there, and more importantly, what is their part to help you get there. We'll talk about team meetings a little bit later, but it's a great place to bring accountability into what the vision is of the company. The third thing is treating your team as your number one client. What does that mean? Putting them first. When you think about bringing in a brand new client, you get referred to them all the way until the time they become a client and servicing them afterwards. How many hours do you spend in doing so? Think about how much time you spend with your team. If they are not on the same page with you, it's very difficult for all of you to feel like you're really doing the job that you are there to do for the client. So by putting them first, making sure that they're clear about what you need, when you need it, why you need it, and who it's for, most importantly, it's easier for them to then put you first. Going back to when I said, be a leader, share the company vision, and now putting them first, all that time that you invest in them is going to make a huge difference. The last piece is encouraging your team to take initiative. I call it SPFS. Support, protect, filter, and schedule. The more that they're supporting you, i.e. putting you first, protecting your time, making sure that people don't get into you when they shouldn't be, filtering things for you, simple things like mail and voice messages, and most importantly, scheduling your time. When they schedule you, when they support you, when they protect you, and when they filter things for you, you don't have all the interruptions that makes you be unproductive with your time. What are the 3 most important things that you're supposed to be spending your time in? I think the first one is face-to-face with clients. The second is prospecting. And the third is delegation. So what would happen in your day if you only did those 3 things? 1, face-to-face with clients. 2, prospecting. And 3, delegating everything else. Think about that. What would happen in your business? I'm assuming what would happen is that you would double your business because you're not spending time on stuff that's unproductive. So let's continue on talking a little bit about time management. I feel that there's 2 different ways to look at time management. One, first and foremost, is your schedule. How many people do you want to see in a week? What kind of people do you want to see? Is it somebody brand new? Is it an existing client? Is it a center of influence? And how much time do you need to spend with your team? On the flip side, your team members would have an ideal day. A day where their morning is filled with income activities, and the afternoon is more the stuff that they need to do. So let's look at your schedule first. Here's an example of an ideal week. In this case scenario, I have 12 appointments. 7 of them are existing, 2 of them are referrals, 2 of them are prospects, and 1 is a center of influence. Your week might be 10 appointments, it might be 15 appointments. But if I'm on your team and my job is to make sure that you're in front of people, I need to know how many people you need to see, and more importantly, of what kind. I see every single day that scheduled appointments are more with existing versus really blossoming or creating a variety of appointments. I see that most times when people are scheduling appointments, that they're just putting anyone on the calendar. What I would like you and the person that's scheduling your appointments, hopefully someone else is scheduling your appointments, is that I'm clear, if I'm that assistant, that you want 12 appointments and of what kind, and more importantly, where in the day you would like them to be. So if you want to see brand new people on a Tuesday or a Thursday morning, my job would be to make sure that that's when you see them. You're fresh and you're ready to go. You can do more of the existing clients in the afternoon. If I'm clear, you're clear, you have a very, very productive week, which is why I call it an ideal week. The other components that are in there are things that you need to do and only you can do. If there's a chance that you have to make calls for appointments, if you're going to go play golf on a Friday afternoon with your centers of influence, and or you want to read or review things that have been prepared for you for appointments, that all goes into your ideal week so that you are not scrambling trying to figure out when you're going to do something. You're very clear. And more importantly, if you're going to review something for appointments, maybe on Monday and Wednesdays, my job, again, as your administrative assistant, is make sure that you're totally prepared for those appointments. Next, we're going to get into an ideal day. Why do I have an ideal day for your staff? This is probably just as important, if not more important, than your schedule. An ideal day consists, again, of income activities in the morning and more of the stuff in the afternoon. What is income activities? Scheduling appointments, preparing for appointments, getting business in and through, underwriting, or if it's investments, making sure that the paperwork is all in. It's the activities that make the business move, grow, and moves revenue more than anything else. What I find in working with assistants across the country, the thing that they spend the most time on is service. Now, I know service is truly, truly important. However, if they're spending all day long handling service and they're not scheduling your appointments or they're not getting that paperwork in or they're doing it later than earlier, then their day becomes unproductive as well as the growth of your business. With an ideal day, they've got time slots, if you will, to do the things that they need to be doing when they need to do them. So if I'm making appointments for you, by 9 a.m., I'm going to be on the phone making those calls. Right after that, I'm going to make sure that I'm doing all kinds of paperwork that needs to be done to submit business and or to make sure that it's being taken care of and it's followed through. And the last thing is appointment preparation. Ideally, you want to be prepared for at least 3 days in advance. And by them working on these activities every single day, you will always be prepared. So what happens in the afternoon? That's when you take care of client service, projects, filing, miscellaneous things, all the stuff that still needs to be done, but more importantly, that stuff is done after all the income activities. I know that sometimes client service, if you're moving money, that has to be handled throughout the day as soon as the money comes in. The idea of an ideal week and an ideal day is to make sure that we're working proactively, not reactively. So that when we do have reactive things that come up, they're very limited and they don't throw us off track. Again, when I bring up an ideal day to an assistant, they usually say, Gina, there's no way that I can work with an ideal day. You have no idea what goes on in my office every single day. I do. I sat in their chair, as they do, and I had to deal with the incoming calls, you, the advisor, interrupting me all day long, and more importantly, I had to make sure that the work was done, because if it wasn't, you were going to be upset with me. So what I'm looking for them to do is to really identify those time slots that allow them to be productive. It's a huge transformation for them because they are worried so much about taking client service first and foremost. What I think you really need to do is express to them that service is important, but it can be handled in the afternoon. In fact, what happened with me is when clients used to call, I would say, May I get back to you this afternoon? And in most cases, people would say, Gina, not a problem. Yes, there were times that they might have been in their attorney's office or in their accountant's office and they needed specific information from me, and then I would drop everything and take care of it. But as time went on, that habit became so natural that when I would talk to somebody about client service, they would say, I know, Gina, you're going to get back to me this afternoon. Clients don't care about when you take care of them. They just want to be taken care of. Therefore, as long as you're doing those things in the afternoon, or the assistant is doing those things in the afternoon, they will be as productive as you need them to be. You follow your week, they follow their day. Next is delegation. How do you delegate? Do you do it walking by, voicemail, email, yelling out your door, copy talk, dictation? There's tons of ways that people delegate. I'd like to suggest that you only delegate in one form. What does one form mean? Well, for some of you, you might like to type out an email, but it would be 1 or 2 continuous emails in a day. For some of you, you might do it in copy talk or words express or dictation. That would be great. In fact, I think that's the best way to do it. The main reason I'm looking for one way is because every time you interrupt your staff, remember, you're their number one client. Every time you interrupt them, they stop what they're doing, they turn to you, and they take care of whatever you just gave to them. As unimportant as that might seem, they stop what they're doing. So what if I'm your assistant and I'm scheduling appointments, or preparing your paperwork, or taking care of things for your appointments? And you walk up and you want me to book a reservation that might be 2 months from now to fly to Italy, somewhere fun. Well, if I stop what I'm doing, I start becoming unproductive for you. And what normally happens is all the things that I have in front of me, as I'm integrating them throughout the day, and or you're interrupting me and I'm putting one thing on top of another on top of another, what do you usually ask me for? The thing that's at the bottom. I never got to it because I was interrupted all day long. Now, not only are you interrupting me, but the phone is ringing. People are walking into the office. So all these interruptions prevents me from being productive. So let's assume that you're going to delegate via dictation or copy talk. So copy talk and words express are companies that will allow you to dictate 24/7. And from wherever you are, you pick up the phone, say, Gina, met with so-and-so, this is what I need you to do. And they transcribe it and send it off to your assistant by email. Well, it might come 2, 3, 4 times in a day, but more importantly, it's coming to them in clumps versus singular types of interruptions all day. What they're going to do is work with one to-do list. But imagine yourself having almost your phone or your dictation machine like Velcro in your hand. Anytime you think of something that you want to delegate to me, your assistant, instead of walking out and interrupting me, you're going to put it on the dictation. And again, you don't have to worry about what it is, when it is, time frames, priorities. I'm going to get it all, and then I'm going to prioritize my workflow for you. So when I am the staff or the operations team, what I'm really looking to do is make sure that I take care of your work, again, going back to my ideal day. So when you're delegating all these different things to me, scheduling for appointments, appointment prep, client service, whatever it might be, those things are going to flow into my day, my ideal day, by having one to-do list. So let's talk a little bit about this to-do list. The main reason I want to have one to-do list is when I'm working with assistants across the country, I find that they have several places for their to-dos. They have a spiral-bound notebook. They have an accordion of 1 through 31. They have sticky notes. They have client files. They have things in their Outlook tasks and or in the database program. Well, how are they going to really know what the priorities are when things are scattered everywhere? Again, this is something that's really difficult for them to learn how to do, but once they get it, it really works. So let me give you an example of a to-do list. So first and foremost, each thing that I have to do is going to have a box in front of it so that I could check it off. And it might be who is the person that I'm working on and what are the to-dos that I need to do. And in each one of these scenarios, when you're delegating via dictation, you don't have to worry about what the priorities are here. I'm going to get all of my to-dos, and then I'm going to work off of that following my ideal day, clumping things, if you will. So even if this is a letter that you dictated, you just dictate the whole letter, and I'm going to transcribe all of it, and or CopyTalk is going to transcribe all of that, and then I'm going to cut and paste and put everything in my one to-do list. But here's the magical part about the to-do list. As I'm going through, and let's just say my whole page is filled, and I finish things, I'm going to check them off. At the end of the day, I'm going to go into my Word document, which is where I'm going to host this, and I'm going to delete the things that are done. The best part about this is not only do I have one form of my to-dos, more importantly, I can give this to you at the end of the day to let you know what's been done and what is left. The things that are left on the to-do list stay on there until I actually check them off. The reason I say it might be best for you to get a copy of this at the end of the day is because when you do, you don't wake up in the middle of the night thinking, did I ever delegate that and or did it get done? It's also one less interruption because how many times will you go ask your assistant if something's been done, if someone's been called? Now, the other piece to this is, let's just say, as my example here on James, you see it on the to-do list a couple of days in a row, and you need to make sure that that gets done. Well, then you can again say to me, I see that James has been on here for several days. I need that to be taken care of. And or, if I'm fairly new, you can say, whenever I delegate something like this, as I did for James, that's got to be done in that same day. Priorities, priorities, priorities. Going back to the ideal day, again, this filters it. It allows me to see everything in one place. I would say the average administrative assistant has a spiral-bound notebook, and it could be this thick. And they might be going back page after page after page just to find one thing on that page. Or they rewrite it every day. With computers today, it makes things so simple. Working with one to-do list is going to make that happen. Now we're going to talk about things that are going to be a little bit more difficult for you. This is where I feel that you need to let go, give up control, and let me, your right arm assistant, take care of everything else. So the first thing I have here is to get rid of voicemail. Why do you have a voicemail? Why do calls even go into your voicemail? If you have a me there, if you have someone there that's assisting you, I should be your voicemail. In other words, when that call comes in, I should be handling it as if you're not there. Doesn't matter if you're sitting in your office with your feet up on your desk and you don't have anything to do, and or if you're out with a client. I should be answering the phone basically saying, he or she is unavailable right now, how may I help you? Now there's going to be times where someone's returning your phone call. Of course, if you're there, I'm going to make sure that I get that to you. But if you're not there, what do I do with that call? The average person will just throw it into your voicemail, or they'll take a message that they're returning your phone call. Well, if you keep me in the loop as to why you're phoning someone, I can then take it from there. Either get the information that you're looking for, and or if you really need to speak with them, going back to what I talked about earlier, I can schedule them to speak with you. My job is to make sure that you're not wasting your time. I'm doing everything in my power to make that time as efficient as possible. So one is if someone's returning your phone call. But what if it's somebody that says, is Fred there? And I can say, he's unavailable right now, how may I help you? Oh, no, I need to speak with Fred. He's the only person I can speak to. I understand, but he's unavailable. What may I do to help you? Well, can I leave a message, or can I go into his voicemail? Yes, I'd be more than happy to take a detailed message, and then I'll make sure that Fred's prepared for you when he calls back. So now when I'm getting whatever this client needs, hopefully it's something that I can handle. If it's service, I can say, I would be more than happy to take care of that for you. If it's something that you and only you can do, that's where I'm going to look at getting you scheduled. I might say, again, he's unavailable right now, so let me schedule a time for the two of you to speak so you're not wasting your time. What would be a good time for you? Bottom line, those calls should not go into you. When they go into your voicemail, you come back, you have 5, 10, sometimes 15 messages, and most of them you're going to be delegating on to your assistant anyway. So why not just have that person filter those calls for you? The next thing is an inbox. Do any of you have a box that looks like this? When you have a box like that in your office, what does it feel like when you walk in? When do you have time to go through those things? What's in that box? So let's look at it in a different way. Instead of me completing something for you, walking in and putting it into your inbox, and not having any idea when you're going to get to it, then we become unproductive. A perfect example is, maybe I prepare 3 of your appointments for you, and they might be a couple days down the road, so I go in and I put it in your inbox, assuming that you're going to actually go into that inbox and look at it. What usually is going to happen is probably an hour before, you're going to want to know where the file is, then you're going to look at it, and if it's not fully prepared, then we're going to be scrambling around last minute making those changes. So what I prefer is that if I'm your assistant, at least twice a day, I'm going to come into your office, maybe for 5 minutes, maybe for 15 minutes. And I'm going to walk in and I'm going to go through whatever would normally go into your inbox with you. So if I have questions, if I have things that I've prepared and I want you to see if you want to make any changes, and or if there's just things that you need to be aware of. Instead of me giving you messages or sticky notes or tell you something when you're walking by, I'm going to be present in front of you, go through it, and then walk out the door. The other thing that this allows me to do is not interrupt you all day long. Remember, when I'm thinking about the ideal week and the ideal day, it's all about eliminating interruptions. So by me walking in there, instead of going into your office several times a day, interrupting whatever you're doing and or thinking about, I can come in, go through my things, and walk out. The reason I say twice a day is because if I only do it once, there might be too many other things, and then I go back to interrupting you. Remember, what I'm looking at is not that you're not going to interact with each other. It's that you're going to be interacting and be productive. You're going to work through your day and your week so that you're proactive versus reactive. And more importantly, you're giving each other the time that you need. You're treating each other as the number one client. So as I walk in, I walk out, you don't have a to-do list, you don't have voicemail, 2 things that are always time wasters. The next one is having team meetings. I find that a lot of times teams are not meeting, and if they meet, it's not about forward thinking or motion, it's more about stuff. It's more about delegation. Here's where, in a team meeting, you can bring back that company vision and talk about accountability. So let's say that one of the goals is a specific revenue number. Well, we all know for you to hit that revenue, you have to be in front of people and you have to be selling. So if my job is to make appointments and your job is to get referrals so that the activity is there to equal revenue, then when we're meeting on a weekly basis, I need to be accountable to, am I making your appointments, the number of appointments that you want and or the kind of appointments you want, and then you might be reporting to me how you're doing on your referrals. I did this every single week when I was working with my advisor. And here's what really happened. Because we had goals and we looked at it on a monthly basis, so we took our annual vision, broke it down into 12 months, and we knew what we each had to do. So every week when I had to go in and not only report my numbers for phoning, but other things that I was responsible for, and Tom had to do that as well with his referrals, we always hit our goals. The only time we didn't hit those goals is when we became unproductive. We weren't following our ideal day and our ideal week. When we were productive, sometimes in the third week when we were reporting our numbers, we were there. Instead of what most people do is they get to the end of the month, they realize they didn't hit their goals, and then they've got to make it up the following month. That's when you become unproductive. You're behind the 8 ball. So a team meeting is really about accountability. It's about focus for the week. It's about forward thinking. It's not about what's not working. It's not about the things that you want to delegate and you didn't get a chance to do yet. It's really about movement, 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 being on the same page, and again, giving that invested time because you're the most important person to me and I'm the most important person to you. So let me summarize here. Even though I'm saying I'm going to walk into your office twice a day to make sure that I'm going over things with you instead of interrupting you all day long, and I want to have structured team meetings. Going back to these team meetings, I would like to have them about 9 o'clock every Monday morning, maybe for a half hour. But it doesn't mean that you're not going to communicate throughout the week. Interestingly enough, I find that most advisors are truly afraid of their team members if they need to reprimand them and or if they want to praise them. Team members, your staff, really need some kind of praise. They need to know that they're doing a good job. I know it's really difficult for you to be thinking about things like that, and some of you are exceptionally good at letting them know that you appreciate their work or just saying the simple words of thank you. But more importantly, let's just break down the reprimands. I get clients calling me every single day, complaining that their staff comes in late. And it drives them crazy. So the first question I ask is, well, what did they say when you said something to them? And their average answer will be, well, I haven't said anything. Okay, well, if you haven't said anything, well, then how do I know that it's bothering you? So if I'm that person and I'm coming in late, day after day after day, and you don't say anything, what that's saying to me is that it's okay. But the second you bring it to my attention and say, Gina, you're supposed to be here at 8, and you're walking in at 10 after or a quarter after. Now, I might start giving you excuses. Well, there's traffic, or I stay later, or I don't take lunch. Doesn't matter. Bottom line, if my hours are 8 to 5, that's what you're expecting of me. So how do you handle it? I look at it and say, I've noticed that you've been coming in at 8:10, 8:15, and you're to start at 8. That means to me that I would like you here by 7:45, ready to go, you have your coffee, whatever it is you need to do, and you're ready to start at 8 o'clock. And you're going to be here until 5. Now you might be thinking that's fairly rigid, but the second you're loosey-goosey on one thing, it just starts to propel throughout everything else that happens in the office. So another miscommunication is if you give me something and I make a mistake. A lot of times, if you see the mistake, yes, you might come out and say, I've made a mistake, but you didn't tell me what kind of mistake it was, so how am I going to learn from it? And or I walk in, you see the mistake, and you just take it back from me, and therefore, again, I don't know that I've made a mistake, and or I don't know how to correct it. So an easy way to do it is, let's say that I created a letter for you that you wanted, and I walk into your office and I give you the letter. You see that there are mistakes. Don't circle them. Don't point them out. give it right back to me and say, Gina, there are mistakes in this letter. You need to find them and correct them. I want you to do this letter as though it's going out to the client, and your eyes are the only ones that are going to see this. By doing so, I'm going to learn how to make sure that there are no mistakes in that letter instead of depending on you to find those mistakes. You should not be my resource. You should be my leader, my mentor, my role model, but not my resource, the one that does all the work. Because the second you start taking work back from me, those monkeys continue to stay on your back. The purpose of me being there is to not have any monkeys on your back. I'm taking care of all those things for you. Another example is the way you think as the advisor and the way I think as your assistant is usually different. Remember, you're creative, you can think on your feet, and you're there to sell. I, on the other hand, am probably someone that's very strong follow-through, very factual, and can't really jump around the same way that you do. So with that said, the best way for you to help me and for me to help you is to do things like have one form of delegation, allow me to work with one to-do list. And by doing so, again, I'm working proactively versus reactively. But also in the way that we think differently, if you're giving to me everything that I really need, all the information to prepare for an appointment or to turn in paperwork, without me having to go to you and ask you a bunch of questions, then we're saving time. But because you think so differently than me, if I'm not aware of how or why you're doing something, I might start to procrastinate in doing it. And if I feel that you're not available for me to ask questions, even if it's when I come in twice a day, then I'm going to feel like it's sitting there and I'm not getting it done, and then you're going to be frustrated because it's not done. So what I'm really saying here is to remember that they think very differently than you, and the more that you understand how they think and operate, and I understand how you think and operate, the easier it is for us to go to work together. So, in ending, Pellegrini's golden rule. If you give them more of what they need, they'll give you more of what you want. So think about that for a second. What do they need from you? The more that they get what they need, the more productive and proactive they can give you what it is you want, but only if they know. Thank you very much. Welcome to part 2, maximizing your client base. There's a big reason why I really want to focus on this. First and foremost, ultimately, I would like to have someone else in your office make all of your appointments, and I'll get into the reasons of why. And the second thing, going back to part 1, I talked a little bit about an ideal week. I'm going to break it down even more so by the importance of working your client base. What I find is that most advisors do what I call cherry picking. What does cherry picking mean? Well, you're going to pull the ripe cherries. You're going to call on the people that you feel are going to want to meet with you and or do business with you. But what about everyone else? That's what we're really going to decide today on maximizing your client base. So the 3 things, again, that I mentioned in part 1 that I want you to be spending your time on is face-to-face with clients, prospects, centers of influence. Bottom line, you're in front of people. Secondly, you're prospecting. And then third, you're delegating. So how do you make sure that you're in front of people on an ongoing basis and you've got that opportunity to prospect with them? Well, as I mentioned in part 1, you have that ideal week. Doesn't matter if you have 12 appointments, if you have 15 appointments, or you want 25 appointments. You got to be clear about how many appointments you want and what the mixture are of those people. So when we figure out what's going to go into your week, we're going to talk a little bit about your client base. So the first thing I have here is that you're going to code your clients, ABC, Gold, Platinum, whatever it is you want to call them. But when you decide what they are, A, B's, and C's, then you're going to determine what is going to be the plan of action. So your A's you might want to talk to and or see quarterly, your B's might be semi-annually, and your C's might be annual. With that said, every day I'm going to be, as your assistant, looking at those clients in that same way. Of course, we want to make sure that we're taking care of our A clients like there's no tomorrow. They're really the cream of the crop. They're the ones that are probably going to be those that give us the referrals. The other thing in coding them is making sure that when I'm scheduling them for you, that I'm always putting your A's in there first, your B's, and then your C's. Again, it's the mixture of what kind of appointments you want in a week. The other piece is determining the number and types of appointments that I said, and then a routine calling system. So what's a routine calling system? Way back when I worked with my insurance agent, I was under Al Granum, who was the general agent. So if you all know who Al Granum is, he's all about the one-card system. Well, because it was so long ago, I actually had the box, the 1 through 31, and January through December, and the little humps of what their birthdays are. That box was magical to me. And I didn't really realize it until I really started to make all of Tom's appointments. So to backtrack for a second, when I first started, the day that I walked into the office, Tom handed me a stack of files. Now, if I go backwards a second and talk a little bit about my interview, that lasted 5 minutes. He asked me if I knew how to type, file, and answer the phone. And I said, absolutely. And he said, great, you're hired. So my first day I walk in and he gives me this stack of files and he says, call these people and make appointments. So I'm thinking to myself, make appointments? What am I making appointments about? Now I knew that I was working in an insurance agent's office, but I really didn't know what he did behind closed doors. So I picked up the phone and I called and I said, hi, this is Gina, I'll say with Fred Flintstone's office, and I'm calling to schedule an appointment with you. Most people said, what does he want to see me about? My response, I have no idea. Today's my first day and I really need you to make an appointment. Now fortunately, I made quite a few appointments that day. What I learned afterwards is that Al Granum told Tom, the person that I supported, that anybody can do administrative work, but the only way you're going to grow your business is if you have somebody else making your appointments. So in the beginning, I called all of Tom's existing clients and prospects. And a prospect to us was someone that he might have spoken to and or got referred to and or met, but never did any business with us. So in the very beginning, those are the only people that I called. And then as time went on, I started to call referrals. Not because he gave them to me to call. I took them. What I saw happening is because I was calling existing clients and he was calling the referrals, his calendar was full and then he wasn't getting to making those calls. So because he wasn't making those calls, I just took those. I thought, how difficult can they really be? I'm doing fine with the existing clients. Well, of course, we all know that calling referrals is a little bit different. Yes, they gave me objections, and in the very beginning, I didn't know how to overcome those objections, but ultimately, I did much better at making those calls than Tom ever did. And there's a couple reasons why. First, if I make the phone call, I'm there when somebody calls me back throughout the day. If you make the call, you're probably out in the field, or hopefully you're out in the field, and therefore it becomes phone tag. The second reason is I'm not selling a product or a service. I'm selling you and the appointment, and it's much easier to sell that. And the third thing is they don't ever look at me as a salesperson, but I'm your number one salesperson, because if I get you in front of those people, what I'm doing is selling you the opportunity to sell your product and services. So with that said, what's the system going to be to bring up those names? First and foremost, around the 22nd of every month, we're going to print off what's called your birthdays and your age changes, or 6 months later, just like the old Granum system. Instead of going to the box, I'm going to pull them up on the computer. So hopefully, when you're cleaning out your client base, what will come up will be your clients. If you have husband and wife that you've sold to as well as the children, and you want them both to come up, then it's going to be 4 times a year. But if we just look at James Smith, and his birthday is in April, so I'm going to pull all the April birthdays and then the birthdays 6 months from now. I meaning the administrative assistant. Then I'm going to sit down with you, the advisor, and I'm going to go through those names with you. And from those names, you're going to tell me who do you want appointments with, and or who are we going to make check-in calls with. And I'll get into check-in calls in a second. The reason I say, what are we going to do with every single person on the list, is this is where we're going to eliminate cherry picking. So in all the years that I made phone calls, the most amazing transformation to me was when I called every 6 months, we were able to turn prospects into clients and clients into referrals. Clients into referrers, I should say. And that was just because I was calling everybody every 6 months. Again, prospects and clients. One time a year they would see Tom. One time a year it would be just for me to check in. So once we go through the list together, and I say around the 22nd of the month so that we have time to sit down and go together, go over the list together, and then I'm ready to go first thing the following month. So now I'm starting to make my phone calls, and I'm trying to do everything I can to build your ideal week. So as I'm phoning in a day, the order of phoning should be first, I'm going to confirm appointments. And when I confirm appointments, the main reason is if I'm confirming appointments for tomorrow, if somebody cancels while I'm making my appointments, then I can try to put someone else in that slot if they don't have to have a lot of things prepared for them beforehand. Secondly, I'm going to get to make my calls. By 9 a.m., this should be happening. So I'm going to make my calls so people have all day to get back to me. And remember, going back to my ideal day, it's one of the things that I'm going to do in the morning because it's going to produce income at some point because I'm making those appointments for you. And then the third thing are check-in calls. So check-in calls are more, we're here, is there anything we could and or should be doing for you? The check-in calls was the magic part to me. Again, I would say 90% of offices across the country do not ever make check-in calls. The main reason, there's no time. There's no value. Well, I'm here to say that because I followed the Granum system, this is how Tom's business grew every year, 20%. And then the following year, we had to beat that 20% and still build another 20% on that, or more. And it was because we worked the client system. We never had to make cold calls because he was always prospecting, and we always had those prospects to turn into clients. So as I was calling and I was making that check-in call, let's say that I'm calling a prospect that you met in January. They decided not to do business with you. So now I'm calling them again in July. And I'm basically saying, are there any changes? Is there anything we could or should be doing for you at this time? They say, no, everything is good. Great. I'm going to call them again in January because, again, 6 months later. So now when I call them in January, my intent is to make an appointment for Tom to see them. If they say, no, I'm still not ready to do anything, I'm going to let them go another 6 months. But when I get back to them again in 6 months, they're going to need to schedule an appointment with us. Otherwise, they're probably never going to be doing any kind of business with us. So with that said, let's say I let them go, and now we're back to a year and a half after the first meeting. And I'm going to say, I'd like to schedule a time for you to get together with Tom. And they say, again, there's no changes. There's no reason for me to get together with them. And then I say, would you like to go in the inactive system? Most people say, what's that? And I say, well, we'll wait to hear from you. And if they say, fine, that's good, then we're going to let them go in the inactive system because they're probably never going to do any business with us. But if they say, no, I want you to keep in touch with me, then I'm going to say, great, you need to come in. Because remember, when we're working the client base, it's our process. It's not their process. We're there to support them and to make sure that all of their needs are taken care of. And if we're not meeting with them on a regular basis, that's not going to happen. Now again, going back to me being able to say all that on the phone, as difficult as it might be for you to think that I can get those kinds of results, Tom was a year and a half in the business when I started with him. I stayed with him for 17 years. Through all of that time, in the last probably 7 to 10 years that I was there, he was at least in the top 100 of 8,000 insurance agents like himself. How did he get there? How did he get there? He got there because I was making all of those calls. He wasn't worried about what I was saying. All he cared about is that those appointments showed up on his calendar. So as I said, I want to make sure that if I'm the assistant that I'm on the phone by 9 a.m. every day so that I don't get bogged down with all the other stuff. Remember, the second client service comes in, my phoning is done. The second client service comes in, I'm not going to be doing the preparation for your appointments, etc. The other thing is, when do we leave messages and what kind of messages do we want to leave? So first and foremost, I would say, hi, this is Gina with Fred Flintstone's office. Please call me at XYZ. That would be if it's an existing client. I don't need to tell them I want to schedule an appointment, because if I do, the person on the other end of the phone might say, I don't need to have an appointment, and therefore I'm not going to call back. I want to drive people to call me back. If I'm calling somebody that may not really know you, then I'm going to say the company name. I'd like a couple minutes of your time. And if it's a referral, I might say, George Jones suggested that we give you a call. So that would be my limited, very brief message. If I left a message on Monday, I'm going to call again on Thursday, and I'm going to leave another message. I've got to create that sense of urgency. If I don't, if I wait a week or 2 weeks, they're not going to call me back because they don't think it's that important. So when I call back in 3 days, I'm going to basically say, hi, this is Gina again with Fred Flintstone's office. I know you're really busy, just need a couple minutes of your time. Please call me at XYZ. And then again, I'm going to do it 3 days later. What I used to do is leaving messages every 3 days. If someone didn't return my call, I would then go into my advisor's office and say, I've been calling Sally, she hasn't called me back, what would you like me to do? In the beginning, that's what I did because I wasn't really sure what to do if people didn't call me back. But as time went on, I built my own systems. So if I called you when you were a client 3 times and you didn't get back to me, the next thing I did is I wrote a handwritten note. Now, I know today everybody would send an email, but I'm really trying to get their attention. Everybody sends emails, so I'm going to still send a handwritten note. And I'm just going to say, I left you a couple messages. Is everything okay? Or I left you a couple messages. I didn't hear back from you. Is everything okay? When they got that card from me, what do you think they did? They called me back. Why? Because they felt guilty. They're saying, Gene, I'm so sorry. I've been so busy. And when they say that to me, I can say, I understand. Next time I call, just make sure you let me know that you're really busy and a better time to get back to you. Primarily because I don't want to waste their time and or harass them if they're not getting back to me. So they learned by system, which was all about what Al Granum was trying to create when he built the one-card system. And when I say they learned my system is they really knew that I was going to call them every 6 months. On their birthday, bar none, I was going to be calling them and wishing them a happy birthday. 6 months later, it didn't matter when Tom was going to see them. The other thing it didn't matter with is that if we saw them 2 months ago and they came up this month for a birthday and or it was just their normal age change or 6 months later, I would still call them and say, I know that you met with Tom 2 months ago. We just wanted to wish you a happy birthday. Hope you have a great day. And they appreciated that. Because again, here's the main point of those check-in calls. When I called for an appointment, again, they didn't look at me as a salesperson, and they were willing to do whatever they could for me. And as years went on, I was able to prospect with them because they really trusted me. The last piece here is that we want to make sure that we're tracking dials. What do I mean by tracking dials? Again, in the one-card system, that was Al Granum's main piece there. You need to know how many calls you're making in a day, how many reaches you're getting, and most importantly, how many appointments. So let me give you an example of how to track dials. If we leave a message, it would be just a simple little dot. A check mark means you spoke to the person, but no appointment. And a check mark with 2 lines through it means you made an appointment. So, in a day, if I called 5 people and I didn't speak to anybody, I would have 5 dots here. If they call me back in the same day, I would make it a check mark or one with 2 lines through it. So ultimately, when I look at this, my numbers are I called 5 people, I reached 3, and I made 2 appointments. 5, 3, 2. By tracking your dials, you should be able to reach 35% of the people you're calling in that day, And out of the 35% that you reach, you would make appointments with 50%. Now, that is existing clients, referrals, centers of influence, prospects, not cold calls. If you're throwing cold calls in there, it throws off all your averages. I would keep those numbers separate. And by the way, if you work your client base and your prospect, you shouldn't have to have any kind of cold calls. But by me, your marketing assistant, making these calls and tracking my dials, the key thing is the reaches. If I'm not reaching people, I'm probably leaving messages that say, I want to schedule an appointment with you. The second, when I'm training people, the second I take that out of my vocabulary and just say, again, this is Gina with Fred Flintstone's office, please call me at XYZ phone number, I'm driving people to call back. The consistency of leaving messages allows me to be persistent, consistent, and then get them to call me back. And by doing so, you're going to hit those averages. Again, you're going to reach 35% of the people in the same day and convert half of them to appointments. If I'm making those calls and my numbers aren't there exactly, just give me a little bit of time. They will increase. So when I first started phoning, did I make appointments with everyone I called? Absolutely not. Especially when I started calling referrals. But Tom never took them back. He never took them back. He allowed me to do the job that he felt that I ultimately could do. He let go of the calls. By letting go of them, if I spoke to somebody and I went through 3 objections, just like I'm sure you usually do, if I went through 3 objections and I felt, oh, maybe just another push, I would have been able to make that appointment, I'd walk into Tom's office and say, I just got off the phone with Sally, I went through 3 objections, I couldn't get the appointment, do you want to try her? Sometimes he did, depending on the referral, and sometimes he just let it go. But when he called Sally, for those that he did call, maybe 1 out of 10 he made an appointment with, which just gave me all the more confidence. The key thing that I'm trying to really present here about not only working your client base so that you're uncovering a little gold mine that you might have in there because you've been cherry picking, more importantly, stressing the fact that someone else can make all of your phone calls, all of them, and keep you in front of somebody, or keep you in front of your ideal week as you've laid out. It might take a month to get there, but this is how your business is going to grow, by letting go of those calls. And by doing so, the outcome is you could have 3 to 5 more appointments per week. That's if you need more appointments. If you don't need more appointments, it would just be the right kind of appointments, because that's what my focus is. You're going to be meeting with the right people at the right time. Again, going back to how you laid out your week. You're going to increase your referral stream if you're asking. So one of the things that I did is I put a referral sheet in the file when Tom went out. And this was his reminder. Usually it was bright pink or yellow or green, and it would just say referrals on the top. Then sometimes what I would do is put down the kind of people that we're looking for. So if they were a physician, we're looking for physicians like yourself, or attorneys or accountants. But the key thing is I reminded him. Now some of you might have an agenda, and that might be one of your agenda items, but I still think the referral sheet needs to be in there. What I recommend to my clients today is to have at the top the kind of people that you like to work with and a space for 3 different referrals and all the information that you want. And then at the bottom is your fax number. So if by chance you say, can you think of anyone that would benefit by working with me, which you should be asking for referrals, right? In all of your meetings, right? So when you ask and they say, oh, I can't think of anyone right now, you can leave that referral sheet with them and you can say, may I leave this with you, and I'll have Gina follow up with you in a week to see if you were able to think of anyone. Doesn't mean because they can't think of somebody at that point, it's a done deal. So if they say, sure, have Gina follow up with me, again, I have a really good relationship with them and they never look at me as that salesperson, then I can follow up with them. If they say, I prefer that I just send it in to you if I come up with somebody, then that means they're probably not going to give us any referrals. But the other thing related to referrals is that in your client base or in the client file, you need to always list what referrals you got and what happened with them. So when you're in front of that referrer again, you can bring them up to date. The more that they feel that when they passed on someone's name to you and nobody complained about it, they have more confidence to give you referrals. And the other thing is, ultimately, when I'm on the phone, I can see who's given us referrals in the past, And I can ask for referrals as well, which I did in check-in calls as time went on. The last piece, as I said earlier, is that when you're working your client base, you're going to turn prospects into clients and clients into referrers. That's how you build a practice. Thank you.
Thank you for participating in this program. For more information regarding products, programs, services, and other NAIFA member benefits, visit www.naifa.org.